With our mandala wheel turning, we are now finding ourselves coming in through gate number 56, which is known as the gate of the wanderer. This is also where we're going to see the crossover point between the ending of Cancer season and moving into the beginning of our journey through the season of Leo. So we're moving between the fourth house with its themes of the home, the family, and really looking at those ancestral patterns to now integrating some of the energetic properties of the fifth house, bringing in the aspects of creativity, romance, and pleasure. When we look at it in terms of elements, we're also going to see a combination between the water element of Cancer and bringing in the fire element of Leo. So we have a lot of alchemy to explore as we're coming through that gate number 56, the gate of the wanderer, which is going to be found up in your throat center within your human design chart. We're going to learn through the teachings of the gene keys, the shadow of distraction, the teaching opportunity or dilemma known as pleasure or pain, moving into the gift of enrichment, and reaching for the highest light aspect, which is intoxication. Through the lens of the I Ching, we'd explore that the movements and views of the inner world are reflected by movements and views of the outer world. Through storytelling and engaging with life as a means of testing human experiences, you exercise your viewpoints and open up new cycles. The circle of life has the potential to become the spiral of life through expansive beliefs and how they are practiced and absorbed. So we can also look at this as the tendency to feel like we're repeating a cycle over and over again until we're finally ready to end that pattern and venture forward to learn something new. And that is when the spirals start to move us up and out of some of those behavioral patterns. So we're going to be looking at your human design chart, and you're going to want to see if you have that throat center colored in or if it is white within your own body graph. If it is colored in for you, you have consistent energy that is in relationship to how you communicate. And in this case, if you have gate number 56 circled, you have a consistent voice that is speaking your mind, and it's coming through the gate of the storyteller. If it is white in your chart, there's inconsistent energy there, meaning you are conditioned to the external forces. And quite often, those become areas of adapting belief systems that may or may not be true to you. So you may be more easily able to recognize when somebody is telling the truth or not telling the truth, when you believe in something, you don't believe in something. And a lot of times our voices can tell the stories of our ancestors or those that we are in interaction with, but then you're going to be questioning the narrative to your own story. In this turning of the mandala wheel, if you're joining us for Inner Alchemy, at this point in time, everyone in the collective is getting this gate activation stimulated, meaning we all have an opportunity to explore each one of those 64 numbers known as gates and the gene key properties through the Inner Alchemy as we explore those even further. So this is the voice of the storyteller. It is one of two storytelling gates. And it's really important to consider that because the throat center is the center of manifestation, communication, and metabolizing. And when we are allowing that to be an expression of ourself through telling stories, and especially in relationship to our own belief system, well, you're creating the narrative to your story and you're sharing that expression with others. So, depending on what you are believing, whether it's coming from a shadow aspect, a self sabotage, a lower belief system, so a lower energy that's taken root within you, this might be your opportunity to pull the weeds out of your own story to allow you to ascend to a higher plane or a higher viewpoint. The energy here is kind of like the gypsy. And if you have this in your chart, you may really recognize this energy where you just want to get out and travel. It's hard to stay in one place for too long because there's so much of the world to experience. And there's a desire there to really want to have some new experiences and then to share in those experiences with others. And that's where we see the gift of using the voice as a storyteller. As you're sharing your experiences, you are adding your own animation to it. You're looking at the feedback from others as a way for you to kind of gauge and learn from your own experience. So you may be looking at someone's body language or how attentive they are to what you've encountered and either kind of reaffirming that, wow, that was a beautiful experience, or that was a hard experience, or, ooh, I don't quite understand that experience. So it provides learning opportunities, whether you are the giver or the receiver within that encounter. You might also notice that your body feels very restless. If you're having to stay someplace for too long, or you're having to do a project and it's requiring a lot of time and patience, and especially during this time of the year as it's turning in the Madala wheel and we're getting closer to the end of July, we're getting into that heat of the summer, it can feel really, really hard to just be stagnant. So you may have to recognize within yourself, how does restlessness play a role? Do you find that you are jumping from one activity to the next, to the next, to the next, and maybe need a bit of a pause in order to really feel your way through all those experiences and to sit in what those have taught you? Is there a draw there to gather with others, to bring more people into your fold so that you can express yourself and have those opportunities to learn and grow? Or are you finding that that restlessness is really hard to ignore because you haven't allowed yourself to get out there and experience things and have some fun? And maybe there's a call in your body during this time to really pay attention to that. What is it teaching you from the depths of your higher self, that inner knowing? What is it that you are ready to experience? You're being led towards experiencing and getting really clear with that energy. You might also notice that if you are someone who does a lot of traveling, and particularly if you have gate 56 within a colored center, you may notice that you're very easily adaptable to being at home wherever you are. And they have an old saying that, wherever you lay your hat is where your home is, meaning that you can make yourself comfortable in a variety of different places. You can feel at home wherever you end up. So if you're exploring different places, different cultures, there's an adaptability to this. And we're all benefiting from this energy during this time as it is engaging us to get out there and live life and have experiences and share with one another and feel comfortable doing so. So this might be the energy that you need to kind of push yourself out of your own comfort zone. And a quote that I came across was, "We travel, some of us forever, to seek other states, other lives, other souls." And the author is unknown for that quote. When we look at the energetic potential in here, which is coming through what is known as a channel, and a channel is any time there is two centers connected together and there is a line there between them known as the channel. So again, you may want to check your human design chart to see if you have this particular channel within your design. And again, during this time, there is a high probability that you are also getting to experience it because of the collective activations that are being stimulated. This is where we see our connection between what is known as gate number 11, harmony, and gate number 56, the wanderer. And it forms what is known as the channel of curiosity. Now, the Ajna Center is our mind. So it is where we tend to research and really kind of bring all of our information in and then sort through that information, dissect the information, and then it flows down into the throat to be communicated. Now, the Ajna is more than the mind. It's also the third eye. So it also has the ability to tap into the higher realms, to get deeper into the more subtle bodies of the soul level and the higher expressions of your emotions, the higher expressions of your intellect, and bring those down into your communication center to be shared with others. Whenever we are curious, that raises the vibration. When you think of children out in the world playing and having fun, they have a natural high vibrating energy. They are very much attuned to those subtle bodies, and their third eye is still wide open. They see the magic and the mystery of life, and they are there to play. And we learn so much by the art of playing. It's only when we become adults that we forget some of that natural tendency to just get out there and have fun. We get conditioned by the world to take things too seriously, and we really restrict our ability to engage with life. So we end up putting ourselves literally in the bird cage and shutting our own doors, preventing ourselves from flying. So this is an energy here that's stimulating and encouraging you to open up the door to your own bird cage. Let yourself out. Go and have some fun. Remember your ability to fly in that and get really curious once again in just exploring the world around you. Now, because of its Ajna throat connection, we're also going to see that there's a tendency to speak one's mind. There's no filter between the mind and the throat except for your own awareness as to the timing of your communication and whether or not the other person is open to receiving that information and if what you are sharing is truly in the highest good. So that comes with a level of maturity. Now, when we're flowing through the energy of curiosity, sometimes people see that as just chasing butterflies. And if you have this channel within your human design chart, you maybe remember yourself as a child just literally skipping to one thing to the next and exploring it all. And maybe at times other people had a problem with that. Perhaps you were even criticized for not being able to sit still or always chasing something different. And oh, what is she doing now? And recognizing that it's part of your nature to get out there and just follow your heart, to be curious. And there was never anything wrong with that little girl or little boy that was out there just playing and moving around so freely. It was conditioned by the world that became too serious, that then had a problem seeing a reflection of freedom. And that's where sometimes we place ourselves in these positions where we stop being our natural self because it's a problem for somebody else, instead of recognizing that it's only a problem because they have stopped their own natural flow. So when we learn to keep our natural flow and we attune to our natural gifts and we stay in our curiosity, then we encourage others to come into that realm as well. But of course, like anything in the world, there is a balance to that. And that's where we see through the gate number 11 as we mature. That's the gate of harmony. Well, there is a balance between work and play, resting and having to get some work done in there as well. And really leaning that into the environment and the family unit and being able to detect whether things are in balance or not. So when you're really checking in with your own body during this time and in exploring this energy, it's asking yourself the questions, are you allowing room for fun? Are you allowing time to play? Are you allowing yourself to explore? Do you give yourself permission to ask questions and to be curious? And do you allow yourself to express from your voice the magic as you see it? Or is there any components of that that feel to be restricted, meaning that's a block to your energy flow? And when there's a block to the energy flow, especially coming from the potential third eye, the higher wisdom, into the throat center, that blocks manifestation. That blocks how you're metabolizing your energy, and it blocks how you're listening to the communication. So when we stifle our curious nature, then we become listeners to the mind talk. This is what I should do. This is how I should behave. This is what people expect of me. Instead of rising that up into the higher aspects of, well, what if there's other ways? So when you start to explore those other ways, this is where you might be drawn to move in and out of belief systems. Discover what other pockets of people do, what other cultures do. What do they believe in? Why do they believe in that? What is the folklore? What is the mystery? What is the symbolism? Why do they condition to certain things? It's also really getting into philosophies, wisdom, concepts, any kind of knowledge that stimulates you and your personal quest for wanting to discover the world around you. And essentially, that is what the child does. The child comes into the world and starts using its environment as a means to learn. At some point, we start to develop our opinions. So, this is now giving yourself permission to go back to being curious, to challenge some of your opinions, to open up those doorways and see what else you can now discover. When we're moving that energy through harmony in gate number 11, there's a natural ability in here, and it comes through sound. And sound is more than words, it's also vibrational energy. So you may feel that the hairs in your arms stick up, the back of your neck highlights. Maybe you have something moving up and down your backbone, some kind of body indicator that senses when things are in harmony or not. And that can be with people, that can be with the environment, that can be detecting a shift in the weather. It can be picking up what's going on inside of you. For each and every one of us, it comes in a very unique way, which is why getting to know yourself becomes so important. There's also a natural fear in here because we're here to learn to recognize our fears and cultivate a greater faith. And in gate number 11, harmony, we have a mental anxiety. That's how the fear shows up because it is putting pressure on the mind until we learn to go beyond that and into the third eye. So in this eye, in this expression of its harmony, its fear, is that you may never have a new idea, right? So it's really searching for something stimulating. It wants to have a breakthrough moment. It wants to learn something new. It wants to have another aha. It wants to be inspired. And then on the other hand of that, it also has a fear of, well, what if that inspiration, those ideas are too weird? what if other people laugh at those? What if other people think you're crazy? What if nobody else is seeing the world as you're seeing the world? So then sometimes it starts to shut that down. You lose some of those childhood gifts. And not that they're gone, but they're hiding behind a wall of self-protection. If you've ever been that little child who has experienced the magic of the world, or really fell in love with the world of the imagination and the unseen elements to that, only to have that being laughed at or criticized or made to feel like there was something wrong with you, that very much does impact the voice and the willingness for that child to want to share. So we want to move back into allowing the curiosity and even leaning towards science if you need some proof to allowing yourself to be curious once again, to really see how things that we at one time did not believe, science has now confirmed that they are true. And how many times did you have an experience that you could not prove, but yet you knew it to be true? So this might be the channel of energy that really gets you flowing back into having more faith for yourself. And as we're starting to see the world open up and be a little bit more receptive to the unseen world of spirits and realms and all of these things, it is becoming easier to find an example that validates perhaps your own experience. So don't be afraid to explore some of those pockets, to reopen those doors, to step back into the magic and allow yourself to have fun from that. As we learn and grow, we have such beautiful opportunities to share experiences with others. And that does come with a level of vulnerability because when we are honest and we share our perspectives, our curiosities, the magical things that happen to us, you do stand the risk of being laughed at, but you also stand the risk of being inspiring. And what if there is somebody else that through your courage, your stories, your life experiences, then start to remember parts of them that they have held suppressed because they were too afraid that nobody else would believe them. So this is where we can really start to come together and light that fire within one another. You know, that's where we see the crossing over of the Cancer season, which can be some intense emotions during that time. Meeting the element of the Leo, the passion, the creativity, having some of that fire to maybe move out of some of that emotional energy and into the excitement once again of wanting to experience some of those things. So looking at your chart to kind of see, you know, is this a channel that is very dominant within your design? Or do you perhaps have gate number 11 circled in your design? Do you have gate number 56 in your design? There's so many ways to have these connections and experiences. And also to keep the open mind of, you know, you have your design, I have my design, everybody else in the world has theirs. The more you are interacting with others, the more you are receiving gate activations within yourself, center activations within yourself. And that is why we are really meant to socialize. We're not meant to be by ourselves. We're meant to get out there and literally get stimulated by feeling the connections through your chart, through the different gates, which do represent your DNA, your cellular makeup, in order to learn and grow and develop that deeper connection with one another. So now we're going to move into the gene keys, which is literally taking the key to unlock the gate. And in this case, we are going to be using the book, The Gene Keys. This is by the founder, Richard Rudd. We are going to use its teachings to explore the shadow of distraction, the dilemma of pleasure and pain, the gift of enrichment, and the suiting here of intoxication. And what these components do is this gives you the inner alchemy to recognize how the shadow or those lower vibrating energies show up in yourself and learn then to move into the gift aspects, the higher vibrating energies. So that's how we come out of our repetitive cycles and we learn how to spiral up. We learn to grow by becoming the wanderer and really questioning our own stories and learning how to open up the book, the opinions, the viewpoints to discover, well, what else? What else is there to learn from this experience? So we're going to start with the shadow of distraction and that dilemma of pleasure and pain. And taking some words here from the Gene Keys itself, this gate number 56, this is one of the second of three trials that we go through. It's what we know as a stop codon in the teachings of the Gene Keys, meaning it brings us to a stop. But in order to come to a stop, we have to go through a trial. And in this trial, the shadow of distraction, it really refers to how we are maintaining the illusion of our own individuality by how our senses, those five senses, distract us. So, how you are distracted by what you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you smell, what you touch. Those senses keep us very much in our physical body. And we do want to know our physical body, but we have a physical body, we have an emotional layer, a mental layer, then we have a soul layer, and we have a higher emotional layer and a higher mental aura, right? So we have all these different layers to us. But when we keep ourselves small, when we keep ourselves only at the 3D level of our human for what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, what we touch, that never branches out into the bigger realms of, well, what else is there? What's in the subtle bodies beyond the physical? So, as long as we're distracted by one of the five senses, we're not feeling our own discomfort. So that's the secret to that. We haven't been taught to explore our feelings. We've been taught to gain evidence from our eyes, from our ears, from the taste, from the smell, from the touch. Proof. Proof to ourselves of whether something is real or not, or to identify it. When we tap into what do we feel, there is so much more to explore. But a lot of times we don't want to feel because then we're uncomfortable. Then we have to accept the pain along with the pleasure. We have to accept our insecurities. We have to accept our confusion, our doubt, our unknown. And unless you give yourself permission to explore, and this is why we're in the gate of the wanderer, there's encouragement to do that. A lot of people don't venture past their comfort zone. When we live in our comfort zone or we live in that shadow of distraction, just those primary senses, it's literally putting a mask over ourselves. And we mask the world in the same way because we're only seeing what we want to see. We're only hearing what we want to hear. We're only tasting what we want to taste. We smell what we want to smell and we touch what we want to touch. We avoid everything else. So we put on the mask and, there's a lot of expressions to that. When somebody asks you, well, how are you? I'm fine. How are you really? Right? When you get into the feelings of that, how are you really? We have a story that we tell ourselves, conditioned from the world, that we can't show our weaknesses. We better pretend that we understand. Got to suck back those tears, and you got to bite your tongue. So there's many ways that the world has conditioned us to not truly express who we are, to keep yourself as the bird in the cage, caged in by those five senses, very aware of what you are seeing in the world around you and looking at the world through the lens of trying to read somebody's body language, facial expressions. Are they rolling their eyes at you? Do they appear to be carrying a certain emotion? Do you have a coping way of dealing with that emotion? Are you hearing tones that trigger you? Are you smelling things that trigger you? Do you respond to touch in a way that triggers you? So we have so many layers of these protections that we have developed from early childhood as we were learning to explore the world around us and having to make sense of what it is we were being told, but that didn't resonate with what we knew, with what we could feel. But over time, you learn to adapt to the adults and the caregivers in your life in order to get your own needs met, in order to be accepted into that, in order to fit into that. And it's really important to look at and have compassion for that child who was probably very mystical and magical and really felt lost in the energy of having to be what it was no longer designed to be in order to feel that it could exist in the world. And that brings its own level of pain. And it's only through allowing yourself to feel that pain and have that compassion that you can then bring those components of yourself back online. You can go back into your inner child and say, I see you. I hear you. Let's explore again through your eyes. Let's tap into these feelings, the subtle bodies in the aura, the vibrations that we cannot prove, but we know they're there because there's something in the body that is telling us. There's an inner knowing that is coming, that is guiding us. So let us explore into those areas. When we look at that condition of distracting, we'll see distractions playing out throughout the world. This has become very, very big, and it's almost come to the point where we can no longer deny ourselves that we are distracting ourselves. And as long as we do that, we are staying victim to somebody else's thinking. And that's known as external conditioning. We're buried in our cell phones. So what we're listening to, what we're seeing, what we're exposing to ourselves becomes our conditioning field. We are hearing, seeing, feeling through governments, TV, social media, music, in our belief systems, our religion, our cultures, our teachers, our parents, our friends. There's so much communication all around us, and it's accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't unplug unless we unplug. So we live in this world that's constantly telling us how to think. And the more you become washed into the belief system of everybody else, the more you distract yourself from your dreams and your ideals, your perspectives, your understanding. So it's allowing yourself to flip that around and come back into you, to question once again, what do you want? What do you think? How does that feel to you? What would you prefer to do, and why would you prefer to do that? And perhaps most importantly, what is that decision costing you? If you were to say yes to you, how would your world change? What would be different for you in that experience? So, distraction works in one of two ways. We have the outer distraction, which is our outer world. And when we allow those distractions to come into us, we're blaming the outside world and we're blaming the people in it for whatever happens to us. So, that creates this victim frequency. That victim frequency through thinking those thoughts, expressing those thoughts, that's in your auric field. This auric field that is vibrating in victim frequency is sending that out to the universe. And the universe goes, okay, and it brings you back more of that victim frequency. So you use your eyes to see you're a victim, your ears to hear you're a victim, your taste to taste you're a victim, your smell to smell you're a victim, the touch to touch that you're a victim. It keeps being replayed through all of those senses until we can see beyond the story that we're telling ourselves that's feeding that book cover, that's attracting back the story of our own creation. Now, it's important to remember that we don't create the events in our lives. We don't ask for those events to happen, but we influence them and how they play out through our attitude. And life is always going to give us things to test us. That's how we learn to grow and evolve, is to test how we are going to show up in certain situations. How strong is your foundation? How strong is your character? Are you able to maintain your integrity, your truth, your authenticity? Or is there more work to be done in those areas? That is how love comes in to really help us build that strong foundation. And it all plays out through our attitude, our ability to cope when life gives us challenges, which are simply ways to grow and evolve. We also have an inner distraction. An inner distraction can be when we are literally trying to shut out the outside world. We live inside of ourselves. We create our own fantasy. We're starting to see a lot of that in our lives here with virtual reality. And there's a few individuals who live literally within that virtual reality and they've created their character and they've created their lives. And they don't have a real presence in this physical world. They live in that world. They're trying to integrate that world into this world. So we're seeing a lot of them dressing as characters, getting together and trying to be that character. And it's the same thing. Their eyes will see what they want to see, their ears will hear what they want to hear, they'll taste what they want to taste to continue to play out that fantasy. And it becomes a way of distracting ourselves from seeing the truth. Now, this has very subtle ways of creeping in, and I love this image because it really shows a picture of how we have a tendency to look at the world through rose-colored glasses. And this can be when we're staying with a relationship and we're pretending that everything is great. So and so is perfect. And it's an inability to look at the truth. Because to look at the truth, you would have to tell yourself some things that might contradict the fairy tale that you're living in. And that can be painful. But we have to be able to break out of our own stories if we want to spiral up into a greater awareness, into a greater love, into developing a deeper self-respect, increased self-love, and moving into those healthy relationships. So, in continuing with that shadow of distraction, we can learn to recognize it through either its repressive state or its reactive state. So, repressive is often very feminine in nature, which means we hold it into our body. The reactive state is more masculine in nature, meaning we do something about it. So, it goes out external from us. In the repressive state, we're understimulated or we just feel numb. And the reference that the gene keys use for that is sometimes teenagers go through what's called the sulking stage. And it literally is as if they've closed off the world. Sometimes they put their hoods up over them, their eyes down, their shoulders are down. They don't walk with a lot of purpose. They're just sulking, right? So it's a form of depression. It's literally being stuck in your mind and your body, and that inner spirit, it has nowhere to go. In adults, if you've gone through those sulking stages as a teenager, or if you've had something that's happened in your life where your spirit literally kind of does feel trapped in there, that manifests into what's called the lemming syndrome. And the lemming syndrome is when you become like everybody else. So you start being a zombie in the crowd. You no longer have your own aspirations. You just follow along. You're just living a mundane life, doing one motion after the next motion. There's no more dreams, no more goals, no more sparks of creativity. It's all really suppressed and hidden in there. And sometimes when children are not allowed to be themselves, and that continues on into teenagehood, or just feeling like, being misunderstood in the world around you or not accepted within the world around you, it really does mushroom in. So, mushrooming oneself is a state of being sullen. There's the extremeness to sullen, there's the little aspects of sullen. So it's really kind of recognizing for yourself, where does that show up in your own life? Where have you lost your own spark and you're just living life following the steps of everybody else? I know I was in that energy for a long, long time. And, I used to tease my husband that I was like, you wake up, you eat, sleep, work, repeat. Right. And so there was just that behavioral pattern of just doing the same things over and over and over again and not feeling that inspiration to that. In a reactive state, this is where we get overstimulated. So when you're overstimulated, your nervous system is really on overdrive. That stimulation usually tries to satisfy itself through the eyes. So because it is hard to sit still and feel, the eyes are always trying to keep busy. And you might notice this in others, or notice it within yourself, that in a crowd, maybe your eyes are darting all over the place. You're trying to see what everybody's doing. You're trying to read their mind, read their energy. You might feel uncomfortable. So we pick up the cell phone. We start scrolling through the cell phone. We're looking at a book, we're reading something, doing something with those eyes. Maybe it's lost in the mind, it's fantasizing, it's having a story. It's keeping itself so busy because it doesn't know how to stay present and feel comfortable. So these become behavioral patterns that are really allowing us to avoid the situation at hand and to not deal with how we're feeling. And again, that goes back to childhood. If you find it really difficult to go into a place with other people and just be there, then you have some of this overstimulation. And we're seeing that more and more and more with our teenagers and with our children because they live in a world that is so overstimulated. And a lot of teenagers and children, when they're out walking now, they can't walk without looking at a phone. Especially if you see them by themselves. Very rare will you see a child or a teenager by themselves without being with their phone. That has become a security blanket. So they're not present to the world around them. They don't know what is going on. They're not seeing what is happening. They're disconnected. But they're disconnected because as a culture, we have created that disconnect. We have placed that child in a situation where it did have to rely on a lot of external care. The patterns of the family unit changed over time, and we saw most parents, most households needing both people to go to work just to make ends meet. So there was all this other stimulation that was poured in order to entertain the child. And it's not from a lack of love, it's from parents and caregivers having to take on more than was reasonable in order to make ends meet, or to be so energetically deprived themselves that they had nothing left to give to that child. And this is how we see those behavioral patterns continue until somebody gets curious enough to say, what if we did something in a different way? What if we unplugged? What if we got back to nature? What if we allowed ourselves to be still, to be honest, to have conversations, to have experiences, to go out and explore our natural world, to get curious? What if we were to lay back on the grass and look up at the clouds in the sky and see what we could see, create what we could create? What if you allowed your breath to be still, to be even, to be full, to be relaxed? What if you took the weight of the world off your shoulders, even if just for 5 minutes? How much would your life change if you gave yourself permission to do those things? So now we're going to move into the gift of enrichment. We're going to learn how to open the door to that bird cage and how to set ourselves free. And it starts by reminding us that distraction is fine. The shadow's not all bad. But the key is that you want it to enrich your life, not to take away from your life. So if you're distracting yourself by doing things that prevent you from living your best life, it's moving in the wrong direction. If you hear all that negative talk in that conditioning field and you distract yourself from that to focus on what does empower you, what enriches you, what feeds you up, what helps you to build that relationship with yourself, that enriches it. So the gift of enrichment is going to teach you to understand the difference between what is feeding your human spirit and what is draining your human spirit. It's no longer going to be a victim to one's senses, those five senses: taste, smell, touch, hearing, seeing, those things that we distract ourselves. It's not going to be focused on I can't do it, so abstaining from something or overindulging. It's looking to find the balance. You're here to sample life and have as many experiences as possible. We're not here to be perfect. We're not here to be saints. We're here to be human. So you're here to find that balance. It's learning how to take the most out of life through having your own self-discipline. So you know what is good for you and what's not good for you. Nobody has to tell you those things. So you have to be responsible for yourself and how you show up and learn the art of self-discipline for when you give yourself permission to do something and when you remind yourself, that's probably not going to be in our highest good. That has to come from you. And when it comes from you, it's not a punishment of I'm not allowed. It's I choose not to. And you choose not to because you know the benefits in the long run by honoring your truth. It's not a punishment for I can't play. So you have to also be the one that creates room in your schedule for play, not distracting yourself by burying it into the work and the to-do list and the responsibilities, which is self-punishment. Self-discipline goes on and says, no, I'm off for the weekend. I'm going to turn off my phone. I'm going to put this aside and be present with my children. I'm going to leave all this and I'm going to go for the walk that my body's asking me to do. So there's many things that self-discipline comes up, and you might have to even really lean into how that word feels for you and the stories you create around hearing the word discipline. It also comes to the point where the more you are aware of how you distract yourself and you don't cave into that and you start to feed your inner spirit and you start to feel more alive again, you practice the self-discipline so that you know you're responsible, you're accountable, you're the one that's showing up. Then you start having this ability to show others that their challenges are also wonderful opportunities. And you do that by sharing your own stories, your own struggles, your own things that you recognize of your behavioral patterns, and then how you change that and what happened when you changed that. Maybe you had a certain mindset and then you discovered a certain culture or belief system and you learned another perspective. Maybe you used to tell yourself certain stories and then you open up the doors to see, oh, there is a lot more to the story than you knew at the time. So it's when we share these things with others and we allow our own experiences, our vulnerabilities, our learning to then become teaching tools to others, that really helps to lift people up. The more authentic you are in your conversations, the more you give others permission to be authentic around you. The walls of illusion start coming down and you start connecting at a deeper soul level. So it's also about being able to laugh at yourself, not to take life so personally, not so serious. All the world is not designed to come after you and to get you. The rain cloud did not form today just to open up over your head so that you could get wet, right? We're not that powerful. We like to take things personally. We like to claim that whatever is happening in the world is a perfectly evil, orchestrated design to get back at us. We forget just to be part of life. It's happening to billions of other people, and not everybody has the same attitude towards it. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, and that's where we really see the learning lesson is pleasure and pain. It's learning to accept all of those moments, to be real about, well, how do I feel, to help ourselves to cope better through those challenges by leaning into the experience of, well, what is this teaching me? And a lot of times, it might be teaching you patience. It might be teaching you to get out of your own way and to trust in life. It might be teaching you how to let go of control or to have more compassion, more understanding. There's so many ways that when we look at life as our greatest teacher and we really get to know our human design chart and those white areas on your chart, well, those are the lessons that you came to Earth School to learn. You're open to the conditioning field, and it's up to you to sift through them to connect to your own truth. So this is huge ability for transformation and growth, and the ascension comes through that. Seeing the shadow and embracing the shadow with love in order to transform. So when we turn inwards to discover what truly lights you up, which is all about feeding your inner flame, your inner soul, your passion, bringing in Leo now, that fire, passion, creativity, that's what that astrological body's here to do. You're no longer going to be interested in temporary satisfactions. You're not going to go for those band-aids. You want to pull the root. You want to get to the root of the issue, which was cancer, ancestral patterns. It's not going to be so easy to distract yourself from that truth. You're going to be so aware that by facing it and facing its lesson, that you're going to go through that powerful inner transformation that will enrich your life. And that is the gift of enrichment. It's no longer running, it's embracing that experience, that challenging relationships, whatever's unfolding, going, ooh, I'm curious to see what this is going to teach me about my true self. Building that relationship with your soul as you walk that journey. And this brings us through to the ultimate sooty, the highest light aspect of intoxication. And I really do encourage you to read this key, this gene key in the book of the gene keys by Richard Rudd. It goes into a lot more depth. And when we get to the sooties, those highest light aspects, they are beyond words. We have our human language that is so limited to the vibration of light language, the language of love. So, to give it a little bit of justice, when you are literally breaking apart the puzzle, the mystery of you, and you hit that point where all of you dissolves away, there's no longer a separate sense of yourself. And you move into the highest frequency of love, which is known as that intoxication, is literally being drunk on love. The only way that I can maybe put it into words in my own potential of understanding what that might be, because I haven't got there yet, is perhaps having an orgasmic experience, one after the other, after the other, after the other. Something that you can relate to that would just be almost painful in its pleasure as you are splitting apart to be embraced by that high frequency of love. So in the Gene Keys, it says, as you let life's arrows pierce you one after the other, you will eventually find yourself so defeated that you begin to laugh. You will stop trying to direct life and you will surrender. The glorious moment this happens to you, your entire consciousness will shift from the horizontal to the vertical. You will begin to see that at this level, every single thing in life can be enriching. It is all a matter of attitude. And when I read that, what I was really experiencing for myself is when we live life at that horizontal, that 3D, all we can see is what's on the ground floor of life. And on the ground floor of life, things are dusty, they're dirty, they're noisy, they're full of distractions. And it's only when we come into ourself and we rise up to what spiritual mystic Carolyn Myss says is the penthouse floor, which is rising yourself out of the ground floor level, out of those feelings of self-preservation, emotional energy, mental energy. I got to figure it all out. And you rise up, you might take a deep breath, bringing yourself up to the penthouse, relaxing your mind, relaxing your breath. And from that penthouse view, you can see further. The air is clear, it's easier to breathe, it's not so noisy, there's less distractions in there. And when you allow yourself permission to rise up, to go vertical, then you know the direction you want to head. You can often laugh at the situation because you can see more of it. It's like rising up in an airplane and realizing that, we're really all in this together. It may feel like it's happening to you. It may feel that you're all alone, but you're going to see, well, you have neighbors, you have a community, there's an external community, there's a province, there's a country, right? There's all of these things. And if you get high enough, you're going to see that we're all in this little marble called Earth, floating in this vast universe, and we are all in this together. So it's not personal. It's opportunities for life changing transformation within yourself when you learn to get out of your way and you trust in the way. It's really about connecting back to the mystery of life, being curious, looking at human behaviors, looking at your own behaviors, laughing when you catch what you do to cope in certain situations, how you distract yourself, and how can you keep yourself present? How can you give yourself permission to have more fun? And maybe lean in deeper to how do you feel? When you tap into those subtle vibrational energy fields, how do you feel? In our last class, we talked about the tree. It's the difference between looking at the tree and knowing the type it is, knowing how tall it is, and being one with the tree. Extending yourself into thyself. So get curious with your exploration, and I would love if you felt like sharing down in the comments to let us know what's coming up for you. Share your stories of inspiration, share your ahas, use the power of your voice, and find your community. There's a beautiful chance in here to build community with others that are also moving through some of those same distractions, and they're looking for creative ways to keep themselves very present. I look forward to continuing this journey with you now through Leo season and really jumping into that fifth house of pleasure, creativity, romance in the element of fire. And I hope that you continue the journey through the mandala wheel with us and join us in the teachings of exploring Leo season. Namaste. The light in me sees the light in you. Take care.